What's up, witches? It's me again. I've been really wanting to start doing videos where I sit down and do some book reviews of all of the pagan type books that I've been reading, because they don't call this the homework religion for nothing. And I am a huge bookworm. I spend the majority of my free time reading. I've always been that way my whole life. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to review some of the books that I've read recently for you and just give you my thoughts and opinions. I have a couple to go over, and I will try to remember to put a title card in here, and then at least link descriptions for all of the books down below. So I just have three I want to talk about. One I read right after coming into Norse paganism and taking up Freya as my patroness, because it's a book about Freya. Another book is about Odin, and I'm actually not all the way finished with it because it's very dense, but it's a really good book, and so I just really wanted to touch on it really quick while I'm talking about the other ones that I've picked up. And then the third one is the unofficial Wisdom of Odin book club book for this week or month or whatever, which is Beyond the North Winds, which Jacob raved about, everybody's been reading, and so I had to move it to the top of my reading list just because of the subject matter, but I'll get into that more in a minute. So yeah, let me start off with the first book that I read, which I do have a hardback copy. For me, whether or not I order a book as an ebook or a paperback book kind of depends on what it is and what I want to do with it. If it's a book, let's say at the Poetic Edda, I have Crawford's translations of the Edda as an ebook, because that's something that I just want to be able to have access to no matter where I am and not have to bring a bunch of books with me to gatherings or wherever I want to travel. So I just want easy access to that information, whereas other books, if I think it's really going to be dense reading material or something that I know I'm going to want to really spend some time sitting down and focusing on and being able to take notes and whatnot, then I might go for the hard copy book instead. But the first one is Freya, Lady Vanadis, and it's by Patricia Lafayllve. This is a really good primer. As you can see, it's not a very thick book, so it's a very quick, easy read, especially for people like me who are just wanting a better introduction into Freya. And what I really like about this book is that it primarily just gives you a nice summary of all of the different aspects of Freya that we know about based on the lore, based on the little that we know of her from the Poetic Eddas and the different sagas. This is just a really nice summary of what you'll be able to find in reference to Freya in the actual Norse historical materials that we do have preserved and passed down. And it does a really good job of citing, specifically what lines and what sagas they're pulling the information from, so you can go back to the source material as well if you want to. This was not, super in-depth, but very informative. I said it was, very short, sweet, and to the point, so it's a nice introduction, a nice primer, a nice summary for anyone who's just kind of wanting to learn about Freya and what she represents and what her different aspects are, and especially based on those historical source materials, of which, especially for the goddesses, sadly, we don't have a whole lot. So the next one, as I said, I'm still, maybe only about halfway through. Yeah, I've kind of been taking this book in baby steps, like I have in a lot of things on this path. Hi, Merlin. But this is Odin, Ecstasy, Runes, and Norse Magic by Diana Paxson. I really enjoy her. Actually, I didn't know until becoming a Norse pagan myself, that she was a member of the Troth, or I think that it might be under a new name now. I know that they've recently like kind of restructured and reformed, but it's a Norse pagan based organization, which unlike a lot of the other more sus ones that you'll find out there, is very diverse and inclusive. And so she's also just a very good historian when it comes to Norse mythology, Norse literature, and those ancient pagan practices. So I had read and enjoyed a lot of her fantasy books. She co-wrote some of the Myths of Avalon prequels with Marion Zimmer Bradley, and then kind of took over writing those books, which I definitely enjoy. And so yeah, I was really excited when I found out that she also writes scholarly books on Norse paganism. So I definitely plan to pick up more of hers, but since I chose to work with Freya and Odin first off, I decided it would be a good idea to start with a Freya book and an Odin book, which, like I said, this one's a little bit thicker, and she really does a deep dive into Odin and all of his different aspects, his different names. This one and the Freya book both also include some, personal gnosis, UPG, and then a lot of like example rituals or meditations, because I think the Troth, from what it sounds like, is a bit more Wicca-ish, just in terms of having a structure and like a priesthood, and conducting those structured formal rituals in a communal setting, and so it provides a lot of good foundations and like sample rituals to form a good basis, especially for someone like me who's more of a solitary practitioner. It's nice, and especially like not being raised in a religious household at all, that's something that I've kind of been struggling with, being new to wanting to practice any sort of faith or religion. Is I'm just not used to making a habit of talking to deity and like worshiping deity or just working with deity. So it's good for people that maybe aren't as creatively minded and can't think of the words to say, or they want something a little bit more formal and poetic and fancy sounding when you do go to communicate with Odin and with Freya. So these are very informative books, but as I said, I am still only about halfway through this one, because even for an avid reader like myself, it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to get through. So I've kind of been reading a chapter here and there, and then trying to absorb it and taking a break, going off to look at something else, and then coming back to it when I'm ready to absorb more material. So just be forewarned with this one. I really enjoy it. That's why I really wanted to talk about it, even though I haven't finished it yet, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. And then the third one, I don't have a paper copy. I went with the ebook because I wanted to just start reading it right away, which is Beyond the North Winds by Christopher McIntosh. I think it was around 300, 400 pages, so not a super long book. The first half, I think, was definitely a lot more dense and throws a lot more information at you about the actual subject of the book itself, which is on all the myths surrounding Hyperborea, which in Greek meant, the land beyond the north winds. Boreas or Borealis was the god of the north winds, and so Hyperborea is beyond Borea. And so a lot of people think now that this land was actually referring to somewhere within the Arctic Circle. So it also kind of touches on whether or not that may have tied into ancient Atlantis myths, which is definitely like a bit of a passion project of mine. I've just always been obsessed with Atlantis and the myths surrounding Atlantis. And I'm not saying it's aliens, you guys, but what if our gods were Atlanteans? So that, as soon as Jacob even hinted that might be what this book was about, I was all gung-ho for it and had to snatch it up immediately, and I spent this last long weekend that I had basically poring over the entire book and cramming my way through it. So I have finished this one. And so like I said, his basic thesis of this book is that something like an Atlantis or a Hyperborea, which is, you know, a lost ancient human civilization that was a lot more advanced than we think prehistoric man was, did exist and was at some point wiped out or destroyed, and the remnants of that civilization spread around the globe and helped plant little seeds of our first known written records of human civilization, which those only stretch back going like 5 or 6,000 years, when we started to see like the Sumerian and like Babylonian and cuneiform records pop up. This is saying that human history, and especially, you know, the history of an actual human civilization, based on a lot of lost or fragmented historical records, might actually stretch back a lot farther than just our written and archaeological record has been able to prove. And I just try to keep an open mind about everything, especially when it comes to our own history, because I think that is a really good point. You know, we can go back to the Eddas, we can go back to a historical basis for what do we know about the Viking Age, but even with the Eddas, Snorri Sturluson was compiling these documents thousands of years after the Viking Age ended, and even the Viking Age was but a remnant of what these actual religious and cultural practices would have been like back when they were in their heyday. So I think just because we don't have any surviving proof that an ancient advanced civilization at one time existed, and what it might have looked like and where it might have been, doesn't mean that it's not possible or that it didn't exist. And I think I'm going to make way more videos on this topic, because I could ramble about this all day long and then some. But yeah, this one, Beyond the North Wind, was right up my alley in terms of that. It definitely, even for me, being an open-minded person trying to think outside the box, like, forced me to even check a lot of my preconceived notions about things, because like I took 4 years of Latin in high school, so especially being someone who's coming into this being a former like Latin, like classical literature nerd, and all about like Greek and Roman mythology and history, I think a lot of like even Western history and academia was founded on this basis of the classical scholars and, you know, Aristotle, Plato, the Roman literature and the classics. But this book is kind of saying there's so much in human history just outside of those civilizations that we really haven't taken the time to examine and to appreciate, beyond just being like, oh, well, the Romans said they were all barbarians that just kind of did whatever they wanted, so we're going to take their word for it, because, you know, it's not like history is written by the victors or anything. But anyway, I think I'm rambling now. Definitely check out this book if you are into those types of things, into history, prehistory, Atlantis, all those kinds of crazy conspiracies. I will say, for me, being someone who is so into that topic, and like one of the sources he cites in the book is Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock, which is another book that I love and have read. It didn't go quite as in-depth to the concepts of Hyperborea being tied to Atlantis, and kind of finding more sources that maybe I hadn't yet discovered touching on the existence of Hyperborea specifically and how it might relate to Norse mythology. I would have liked to see him drawing a little bit more of a connection there, but because to me, like being an English major, the second half of the book kind of started to read like I'm writing my term paper and I'm not quite meeting the maximum like page count that I need for this assignment. So let me see what else I can kind of throw in here to pad it out a little bit, because the first half of the book is great up until about like chapter 5 or 6 or so, when he's going through summarizing all of these different myths about Hyperborea. He talks a lot about Wagner and the Nibelungenlied and the historical basis for those, and kind of why there might have been this great resurgence in like national fascination with these stories and these cultures. I would have liked to see a little bit more crazy conspiracies being gone into more in depth, whereas the latter half of the book was more kind of a summary of here's all of the different works, including like up into Marvel Comics nowadays, where we're just fascinated with these ideas, with these gods, with these concepts, and where that origin story might have been from with a Hyperborea or an Atlantean type great civilization. So yeah, definitely check that out if that's something you're into. I definitely want to make more videos rambling on Atlantis and Hyperborea and all of those like ancient, lost, utopian type civilizations, because I think there is a lot to explore, especially it goes a long way towards filling in a lot of the gaps or theorizing why we might see a lot of these ties and these similarities between Vedic, Sanskrit, and like early Indus Valley civilization or Proto-Indo-European religions and deities, and between the Aesir pantheon. And because even being so new to Norse mythology, I've studied a lot of Eastern religion and Hinduism specifically, and so yeah, I see a lot of similarities between a lot of the Vedic and Hindu gods, and between a lot of the Norse and Slavic gods. So that's something that I really want to explore further myself, because I've studied Greek, Roman, and Celtic myth a lot, and then like the Middle Eastern a little bit, but I haven't read a lot of like Slavic myth or those types of stories. So there's always more to explore. Like I've said, this is the homework religion, but yeah, I just wanted to at least touch on like these two books really quick, and then give my own quick review of Beyond the Norse Winds, since I know a lot of us are reading that right now. And so yeah, I've really enjoyed all three of these books. I would say out of them right now, even though I'm not done with it, my favorite, the one that I would recommend the most, is this book on Odin, especially for those of you who are interested in working with Odin in particular. I will have the links and descriptions for all three of these books down below, and let me know if there's any other types of videos you want to see on this channel, because yeah, so far I think it's just gonna be more of my random crazy conspiracy ramblings, maybe mixed with some book reviews, and just summaries of my own personal thoughts and experiences that I've been having so far as someone who's so new to this. For someone who's working with Freya and Odin, these two books have definitely been really good just primers, like I said, on those two deities. And then if you kind of want to go into a crazy historical theory deep dive into possible origins behind some of these myths and stories from not just Norse mythology but around the world, then definitely check out Beyond the North Wind. I'm sure I will have more book reviews coming for you in the future. I think I would like to go back and kind of do a review or summary on some of my Atlantis type books, like Fingerprints of the Gods, that I have read. So let me know if that's something that you would be interested in. Until next time.